Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Elisa Sklar. I am the Director of Marketing at GIS Planning, and I'm here today with Russ Riblett, our Director of Sales. Hi, Russ.
Hello there.
And we'd like to welcome you all to the webinar. We're going to be talking about designing the perfect site selection tool. And we're going to think about some of the elements that you might want to see in a tool to make it most efficient, most effective, to get the most amount of success for your location when it comes to marketing it and putting the data out there. We're going to talk about today is some of the basics of what a site selection tool is actually supposed to do, because sometimes there's some misinformation or misunderstandings about the kind of optimal features and the end result that you're looking for. We're going to look at what features should be considered musts on any online site selection tool. And then we're going to help you think about what solution might actually suit your location. Now, one of the things that we really think are important to emphasize is that site selection tools are really about helping businesses or investors find the right location with the right properties, with the right conditions. And we really like to start by thinking about the location as the first and foremost the thing that we want to focus on, because really there's a lot of right properties around the globe and in North America and in the United States and Canada as well. So that location is really kind of critical. So I'm going to briefly indulge in a little metaphor here, if you'll just stick with me. We like to think that site selection in some ways is a lot like matchmaking. I know that's going to sound a little odd, but bear with me here for a second. So let's take this analogy here. We've got an economic development professional in the lovely state of Oregon, and she is looking for a match for herself. And we're talking about a dating match right now. And she potentially could find a lot of different matches. She goes on a dating website and is ended up matched with a fellow from the lovely state of North Carolina. Now, there's a couple problems here. One is, of course, that they are separated by a lot of geography. She has, the right guy, but she really likes Oregon and she wants to stay there, and he has no intention of moving. So she can pack her bags and she can get on a plane and he can come and visit her. But ultimately, that location problem is just going to be very difficult for them to overcome. So what she can do instead is kind of focus on what she knows she wants. She knows that for her, the right location is Oregon. She wants to stay in the state. And so then she can refine her search within that particular territory. And it turns out that there are a lot of guys in the state of Oregon who might also be a good match for her. Once she figures out the actual thing she's seeking, she can find the right guy, and the rest can work out well for them. And so we know that, of course, this is going to make her happy. He's going to be happy. And we've been able to put the two of them together. And it really came down to her knowing what she wanted, where she wanted to be, and then kind of focusing her search from there. Now, another way that we can think about site selection being a lot like dating is to think about the information that you might put out there. In some ways, there are some parallels with the world of dating. So let's say you're on a dating website and you're looking for information and you see, get all this data about someone and you think, wow, this really might be the right person for me. But when you actually meet them in person, what you find is very different. Now, Arnie now is not what Arnie was. Very few of us 30 years later look like we did before, or more in this case, possibly. But we know that data is kind of misleading. If you're just showing that kind of old, out-of-date information, then the people who actually get a chance to meet you are going to be disappointed. And we know that the quality of information clearly makes a very big difference. And data is only effective, it only works if it's kept regularly up to date. And when it's left solely on the shoulders of economic development professionals, that can be a really big job, because there's a lot of data that you need to put out there. And keeping that constantly updated, if it's solely on your shoulders, is going to be a problem. It's going to be a big chore. So given these kinds of things and some of the other conversations we want to have with you today, let's think about what some of the features you'd want to find on a site selection tool for it really to be the ideal site selection tool. So first of all, we know that we want to have consistently refreshed data on certain things that are of importance to us. So that includes demographics, workforce, and consumer spending. We know that we need to have really excellent quality business and industry data that lets us drill right down to the 6-digit NAICS code, because businesses very rarely think of themselves as general businesses. They think of themselves as specific kinds of businesses, architects' offices, engineering offices that focus on water or other kinds of thing like that. We want to be able to give that information to investors who are looking in a particular location. We want to be able to offer dynamic reporting. So that means we can refine results up to 60 miles around a specific address. It's also nice to offer drive time. So maybe people want to refine it within 60 minutes around a specific address. We want to give your potential investors the ability to compare communities. And similarly, we want to give them the ability to compare properties, because they may have a few things in mind, and sometimes you really need to see them side by side to be able to parse out the elements that are of importance. Furthermore, we need to make sure that any online site selection tool offers reports that are easily shared. That means that you can easily download them. That's actually what that's supposed to say over there, so that you can keep them for reference, but that you can save them, and then you can share them with other interested parties. It's particularly important if an investor is working with a location advisor, and we know that they want to be able to take that out of there. We want to also offer interactive charts and graphs of data that can be easily exported, so they can be included in a report. So that would be data about demographics, consumer spending, workforce issues, all of these kinds of things. Often that visual reporting is so critical. We want to offer the cross-posting of properties on a national site selection portal to maximize traffic, because you never know where these site selectors and investors are starting their search. And so having that ability to cross-post is more likely to drive traffic to your site, because we know that that's the first stop for a lot of investors when they're looking for locations. And as well, we want to make sure that we offer full mobile optimization. So site selectors and business owners can access a full range of information, whether you're using smartphones or tablets or computers. And our research is showing increasingly that up to 25% of searches on our clients' websites is happening from mobile devices. If you are working on a site that doesn't offer that optimization, then your visitors very likely are going to get frustrated and leave. And so with that introduction, what I'd like to do is pass this off to Russ so that he can carry on with the rest of the conversation, and I'll join you afterwards.
Great, Elisa. Thanks for the intro, and thanks everybody for being here today. I'm going to walk through a number of the features that Elisa had talked about, and really focusing today on sort of the visualization of data and being able to use data in a number of different ways as we go through. So this is an application for the Beacon Council in Miami-Dade County in southern Florida. And what you'll notice here is that we have the ability to do a number of different things on the site itself. We can search, we can for sites and buildings, we can search for businesses, we can search for communities, we can view layers of information, we can compare communities and things like that. So just want to kind of take you through a couple of the steps and then really kind of focus on the visualization aspect and the ability to be getting this data off to those folks who need it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start with a property and do some analysis around a property. Really, I'm interested in let's say 110 Brickmill Avenue here. So we'll go ahead and we'll drill down into that property. We'll give you kind of a location on where that property is, an aerial image of it. And some information about the property, site selection information when it comes to attributes of the property. But really what I want to dive into today is sort of the visualization and the data components, because we talk about the refreshing of data and being able to generate and refresh reports and provide data to our clients. Data and updated data is the most important thing that site selecting community has been talking to us about. And so one of the things that we like to do in our applications is update this data as frequently as possible. So demographics, labor force, consumer spending, updated twice a year. Very important to get the freshest and most important data, or the best data that's out there. You'll notice we talked about the charts and the visualization and being able to see data in a number of different ways. Here we have it, age distribution, for example, current year estimate on age distribution. You'll notice that the raw numbers, the percentages, and the charts, three different ways to visualize this data when it comes to the different pieces of the puzzle here. We look at sex or we look at race distribution. Any of these major categories that are here, we have the ability to visualize them. So when the user is coming to the tool, they may have certain preferences on the way that they want to look at data. Again, raw numbers, percentages, charts. They also may want to be able to define a report in a way that makes sense for them. So maybe it's a 5-mile radius around the property as opposed to a 10-mile radius around the property. And so being able to generate these reports on the fly so that the user can define data and look at data the way that they want to see it. We also have the ability to take this data and visualize it in a different way. I'm going to jump over to a different website, which is Santa Rosa, which basically takes the concept of this demographic data but embeds it within their website. So out of the site selection tool, but now onto an existing website or existing web page to be able to visualize this data. So in this case, we're looking at Santa Rosa, and maybe we wanted to look at the age distribution in Santa Rosa. We can open that up. We can visualize that data again with the charts, the raw numbers, the percentages, and then we can also look at it in a heat mapping component too. So maybe I wanted to see where the concentrations of 20 to 29-year-olds were in Santa Rosa. Now I'm taking it to another level and giving you kind of a fourth way of visualizing this data, which is in a heat map. I could visualize this data at 3 different levels of geography too. If I were to zoom out, I could visualize it at the county level. Right now I'm looking at it at the zip code level, and if I zoom in a little bit, whoops, hit that button the right way, I will be able to visualize it at the block group level as well too. So being able to do very, very detailed analysis about each of the categories. And so, for example, we can see right over here by I-90, there's a high concentration of 20 to 29-year-olds that live in this area. So being able to embed this data and being able to present this data in multiple ways is something that we're finding very, very useful to our clients and also to kind of the site selection community as well, where you don't necessarily have to be on the site selection tool to be able to visualize the data. So we're going to pop back over here and we'll take a look at labor force information. Again, another data set that is updated or needs to be updated on a regular basis. In this case, we're updating this data twice a year as well. 10-minute drive time is sort of the default. And I will scroll down a little bit here and just show you another way of visualizing this data is with charts. And so what we're looking at here and visualizing these reports, the ability to kind of dissect data too. So you'll notice on the left-hand side of this report, we have total businesses by establishment type. On the right hand, we have total employees by establishment type. So you'll notice that these reports mirror themselves left and right, except one of them is establishments and one of them are businesses and one of them is employees. So for example, in this, we could look at the agricultural services, and you'll notice there's 414 businesses within 10 miles of the location that we're looking at. But there are 1,798 employees that fit within that category as well too. So the ability to do this analysis sort of left and right to line up the establishments on top of the employees and to visualize that on the raw numbers is very important. And one of the other things you'll notice is that about 0.5% of the businesses are in that agricultural services, but only about 0.25% of the employees are within that category. We also have the ability, again, to look at this embedded in another site. So this is a website for Bowling Green or South Central Kentucky, and you'll notice that they have a workforce page. They have some workforce information about them, but if we scroll down a little bit more, we can visualize this data again at the labor force side of things, and if we wanted to look at total businesses by establishment type, we could do that. And we could take agricultural services, because that was the one we were looking at before, and we could map where the concentrations of those businesses are in this case. So again, taking this data and being able to use it in multiple places and visualize this data in a number of different ways. The third piece that I want to talk about is the business information. And so Elisa talked about being able to drill down to the 6-digit NAICS code and being able to really analyze information or analyze specific characteristics of the existing business community. What you're looking at here is a 1-mile radius around this property and all the businesses that are within that 1-mile radius. And you'll notice that there are a number of different categories and classifications of businesses is here, and we could open this up and we could drill down into construction, for example, and we can see the different construction firms that are here. And if we even wanted to drill down a little bit further, we could actually see the actual businesses that are within that category. But we can also modify this report, and we can do some really detailed analysis about the different businesses that are within a specific radius. And so in this case, let's just take 3 miles around this property. We can also filter by number of employees, revenue, years in business, and again down to the 6-digit NAICS code. But then we can also use these major classifications here too. So for example, if we wanted to see where the engineers were within 3 miles of that location, we could select that and we could generate the report. And you'll notice that there are 129 engineers that meet that classification. Why is this important? This is important for clustering and for being able to visualize this data. You could look at a spreadsheet with businesses until you were blue in the face and have no idea kind of contextually where these businesses are located or if there's any clustering effect. If I was a manufacturer, for example, and I wanted to see where like businesses were around my business or where a potential location, or maybe potential suppliers that might be around there, or maybe folks that I might be able to sell to if that makes the optimal business decision or location decision. I can see that now and I can visualize that information by drilling down into the specific categories that I'm interested in. Again, I can also take this and I can visualize it embedded within my website. So for example, if I wanted to look at specific industries, and let's just take, well, since we were in construction before, we can look at the construction industries and we can visualize all of them. And this map will draw, and it'll show us where all the construction businesses are. In this case, within the county of Santa Rosa County, we could zoom in and get a little bit more detail on the businesses that are in here as well. So again, being able to take this information, use it not only in the site selection component, but also visualizing it in different different pages within your website. So really capitalizing on that data and being able to provide that data to your website clients in the most and the best way possible. One other component of this data visualization component is layers of information and GIS data. And being able to, for example, take a look at specific things like land apple. And so we'll turn on the land use. They have to give us a little bit of a disclaimer here because we're connecting directly to their site. But now you'll notice that we have the land use, and if I zoom in a little bit closer here, this becomes a little bit more defined. But so having the ability to check at land use, layer businesses on top of it, and also check the type of property or the land use of the available property that's there. So being able to visualize this GIS data or these layers of information by turning them on and off is another very, very valuable component for your website user. And again, being able to take that technology and embed that on different places within your existing website. So again, we'll roll over to Bowling Green. And in this case, they're interested in healthcare and mapping a layer of information of hospitals. And so being able to define where all the hospitals are within a specific area, or if they wanted to, for example, use land use, or maybe some of their incentive zones where they might have a page on their website for incentive zones. Taking the maps and making them interactive, which is very, very key, as opposed to just providing potentially a static map of, let's say, an enterprise zone or an empowerment zone or a foreign trade zone. Being able to have an interactive map and then being able to do additional analysis, whether it be demographic, consumer spending, or labor force data, around those specific layers of information is also a very, very valuable component. couple other things that Elisa hit on that I wanted to share with everybody is the ability to get data out of the application and being able to provide this data in a number of different contexts. So being able to share data, being able to link to it, being able to email it, or even post it across a number of the social media platforms that may be out there. That's something that our clients are really starting to, or are finding useful, especially when we're looking at specific data sets or maybe specific properties or specific pieces of information that they may want to post about their community. Being able to take that data out of the site selection tool that you have and share them across those different platforms has become a very, very valuable tool. Also being able to export this data, whether it's a single PDF of a map or the data that you're looking at, or taking multiple reports and being able to export those into a single report or share those via email or in a Microsoft Word or Excel document. The ability to easily and seamlessly take that data and that information and share them across those different platforms is very, very important in terms of the tool set that you want to provide on your site selection website. There's one other component that Elisa talked about, which was the ability to compare communities. This is really kind of an important piece too, where I may know that I am in a specific community. So let's say obviously we're in Miami. So we'll choose Miami. Whoops, it'd help if I could spell that correctly. And I want to compare that. And maybe I live in Tucson, so I will use Tucson as my example. But I know that I'm competing with a community, or I may be, heads up against a community in the region, or maybe a different state. So being able to compare information across communities across the United States. So let's go ahead and I can get my mouse to click on the correct button here. Go ahead and compare that. So we'll provide a map. Let me minimize this to get this sort of out of the way here so we can see. And then we'll scroll down a little bit and we'll take a look at the comparison components. And so I'm now comparing Miami and Tucson, and I have some summary information about each one of those pieces. But I can also take a look at the aggregated reports that are provided. So the labor force report, for example, and again, being able to export this information or share this information via email or a link are all options or possibilities and pieces of the puzzle that should be there for you on your website. Taking a look at the demographics side by side and the age distribution and race and that type of stuff, household incomes, things like that. Being able to share them side by side. Consumer spending is another way people are how they're spending their money, and we talk about updated data and again getting that constant and fresh data out there to our website users. And so being able to compare these two communities side by side is another feature that's very, very valuable on kind of this on the tool that we have here. And I think with that, Elisa, we're going to turn it back over to you to maybe just finalize the cross-pollination on the national site and also the mobile discussion, if that's okay.
Great. So thanks for that, Russ. Let's take a look at some of the things that Russ talked about and see if we can to put it all together, really. So we want to think again about the list that we had at the beginning about the features we would find on a perfect site selection tool. So we talked about the importance of having consistently refreshed data on demographics, workforce, and consumer spending. And Russ was able to show us how that happened not only on Zoom Prospector Enterprise itself, but also the importance of embedding that data on the pages of your website where your visitors may happen to come. You never know exactly what will be their point of entry, and you want to make sure that they get that high quality interactive information exactly where they are without always having to send them away. We looked at the importance of business and industry data that let you drill right down to the 6-digit NAICS code and how important it was to make sure that that was something they would be able to engage with. We talked about dynamic reporting and the ability to refine results, whether it's in terms of radius or in terms of drive time around a specific address, once it gets down to the nitty-gritty analysis for a specific prospective property. The ability to compare communities and comparison of properties, as we saw, the tool that you've got over here that lets you do the comparison. We also talked about how important it is to have reports that are easily exported and shared, particularly when there is a team that needs to be reported to, when a business case needs to be put together. And similarly, the importance of having charts and graphs for data that can be easily exported and shared. The other thing that we looked at was the cross-posting of properties on a national site selection portal to maximize traffic. And that's something that Zoom Prospector Enterprise offers. There's no subscription fees. There's no registration fees necessary for any users. It's free for any community to post on there. And we know that Prospector Enterprise clients have the ability then to cross-post so that their properties can be searched directly from there, that they can hop over to your site. And finally, we looked at how mobile optimization was so important so that site selectors and business owners would be able to access no matter what device they're actually using. This is the Zoom Prospector interface that many of you, of course, will be familiar with as a national site selection portal. And you'll see here the mobile optimization screen here. So the idea with mobile optimization is it isn't just a regular website that people have to navigate on those little touch screens that can be so difficult to be able to select things. In fact, we've reimagined the product without losing any of the functionality or features and made it work on the small screen. So that way you'd be able to do all the things you'd normally want to do and be able to do it on the small screen, which ensures really that you're not losing site selectors or potential investors just because they're so frustrated at having to manage that experience on a small screen. I know we've all had that experience in different kinds of sites, and it's certainly something we want to make sure we avoid for our users. And so with that, I would like to open this up to questions for any of the any people. You can look at the questions tab on the right hand side on your GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to type your questions in over there, and we can take a look at them. And so one of the questions that we have, Russ, is what is the source for the data that we're using?
So there's a number of different sources that we use. The data is provided to us at the census block group level, and for the labor force consumer spending and demographic data, we use applied geographic solutions for that data. We also have wage and salary data that's provided to us by Bureau of Labor Statistics, and then the business data is provided to us by InfoUSA. And the business data was the points that we viewed, and that data is updated quarterly or 4 times a year. So we're trying to make sure that that data is as fresh and as real as possible.
Right, and we know how important that is. You know, and a location advisor, or a site selector, investors looking at your website, you want to make sure that they can trust the data that's there in order to make their decisions. Otherwise, you could be losing leads without ever knowing that you were even in the running, couldn't you?
Correct.
Another question that we have here is about the intelligence components, is whether they always come with Zoom Prospector Enterprise or whether it's possible to have that as a separate feature on your website.
Yes. So the answer to both of those questions is yes. The Zoom Prospector Enterprise implementation does come with the intelligence components, but having the intelligence components outside of a Zoom Prospector Enterprise implementation is also possible as well.
Great. Okay. And another question asks, is the demo and business data specific to a city, or is it possible to drill down further, let's say, to the census block group, or go up again, kind of more to the regional level, like county level?
So the demographic data is provided to us at a number of different levels of geography. We will always have it aggregated at the county level. We have it at the city level, and then the analysis that we were doing was actually at the census block group level. So being able to do that on-the-fly analysis where we did a radius around the property or a drive time around a property, that is actually aggregated census block groups around a specific property. So a number of different levels that the data is provided to us at.
Well, that's an excellent question, isn't it? Because we know that that kind of granularity for data can be so critical. I know that if you can only get information at the county level, it can be very, very frustrating because you want to be able sometimes to really drill right down to the area surrounding a specific property. So sometimes we need that kind of hyper local, and sometimes we really want that regional data. So it's
Right.
useful to have.
And one of the other nice features too, Elisa, is that for our radius and drive time searches, we'll go 60 miles and 60 minutes beyond the border or the geography of our client base. So if there is a property that is maybe right at the edge of a community, or maybe a community that butts up to a larger community where there's a labor force draw, we can or that data is actually incorporated into the analysis that happens as well too.
That's a good clarification because if you're near a state line or near a large community, as you say, you want to make sure that that information gets counted into the decision-making process.
Right.
Another question we have here as just a clarification, which is what one platform seems to be using NAICS data, but the widgets looked as if were using SIC.
We actually use both of them. I didn't drill down on the NAICS side of things on the widgets, but we use both NAICS and SIC.
Okay, excellent. Great. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our questions here today. Again, we will be emailing you within the next couple of days with a link to the recording of this webinar. Please feel free to pass it on. Get in touch if you have any questions. You see Russ's email address and telephone number here on the screen. You can reach out to us anytime at info@gisplanning.com, and we will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you all for taking the time to attend today. And thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Elisa.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.